It's Bucket! Power is an essential resource in allthemods 10. Whether it's powering furnaces, machines, tools, jetpacks, some mods won't function at all without power. And if you're working towards the allthemods star, you're gonna need a lot of it. There's also a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to power. And a lot of that is due to how some mods have been rebalanced in allthemods 10. There's quite a lot of options when it comes to generating power, storing power, and transferring power. So today, we're gonna go through a variety of methods, including popular methods to generate power to help you figure out what the best way is to approach power in allthemods 10. Power generation in the early game. We're going to start by exploring some of the options that require zero maintenance. That means you set these up and they'll start generating power on their own without you having to do anything else. Thermal generators are from the mod Powah. These need a source of heat underneath and water piped into it. If you hover over a thermal generator in JEI and press U, you can find different heat sources that you can put underneath. The better sources of heat will generate more power. In addition, Powah has many different tiers to their blocks, which allow you to upgrade your blocks over time as you gain access to more resources and more power. With your first setup, it's usually easiest to have lava underneath, and you should be able to upgrade to a basic tier if you have the resources. This would generate 40 FE per tick. The hardened tier will then require you to get into the mod by using an energizing orb for the required materials. This will generate 75 FE per tick. This was quite a popular early game power generation method in the past. However, thermal generators were nerfed in version 2.29, and now they honestly kind of struggle in the early game. Wind generators from Mekanism. All that's required for these to function is the center of the turbine needs a clear view of the sky. Right now we're at a Y level of 5 and we're generating 60 FE per tick. However, these will generate more power the higher Y level you place them. At a Y level of 100, we're generating 140 FE per tick. The max height we can place these is a Y level of 315. At this level, we're generating 360 FE per tick. Now usually to generate power, your generator is going to require some kind of fuel. So basically we're looking for some kind of furnace. Only when we give it fuel, it's going to produce power. And just like for furnaces, a good fuel source that we can use is lava. So what are some good ways to get lava in the early game? Fluid drawers with dripping upgrades will generate lava over time. More dripping upgrades will generate more lava. When a hose pulley from Create is used on a source of lava that's greater than 10,000 blocks, it'll consider that source to be infinite. One of the easiest ways to do that is by using a lava lake in the nether. All we need to do is place down our hose pulley. To lower the hose, we can use a hand crank. If you've got engineer's goggles, the hose pulley should tell you that it considers this source to be infinite. Then all we need to do is pipe it into a dimensional tank. Make sure you have this area chunk loaded and we have infinite lava. Back to our generators. There are a number of different generators that will take lava as a fuel. Some notable ones are generator galore and iron furnaces, which on the surface they look pretty similar, but iron furnaces definitely pulls ahead in power generation in the early game. For example, a netherite generator from generators galore would generate 256 FE per tick, whereas a netherite furnace from iron furnaces would generate 1000 FE per tick, or 2000 FE per tick with a speed upgrade. So with our lava source, how would we automate fueling our generators? First, we're going to have our furnace with a generator upgrade. On top, we're going to place a fluid tank from Ender.io and a fluid drawer on top of that with 3 dripping upgrades. On the fluid tank, we're going to configure the top side to pull and set the bottom side to push and pull. On the furnace, set the top side to fuel input. Turn on auto input and auto output. The sides you're going to use for power, you're going to need to set to output. So you can just set all of the other sides to output. Now we have to do some very specific things to make this work. First, we need to use a bucket to manually put some lava into the fluid tank. If the fluid tank ever goes empty, this whole thing will stop working. Now put a glass bottle in the top left slot. This is a slot for emptying containers, and we want to stop our buckets from going into there. Then throw an empty bucket in the top right slot. What should happen now is the bucket should fill with lava and automatically fuel our generator. Once the bucket's emptied in the generator, the bucket should go back to the fluid tank to get refilled and continue the cycle. Iron furnaces also have a speed upgrade, which will double the power production but also double fuel consumption. That being said, a fluid drawer can support at most a netherite furnace without a speed upgrade. Past this point, we're going to need a method that's going to be able to generate lava quicker, and so we can switch to our Create setup. This can support our furnace all the way to unobtainium with a speed upgrade. In fact, it's good enough to be able to support several of these. So with iron furnaces using lava as a fuel source, with speed upgrades, here's how much power you'd be making. Although power isn't as strong in the early game, it's much better later on. The nitro thermal generator is the highest tier, and with soul lava underneath, would generate almost 16,000 FE per tick. And just so we can make some comparisons, the nitro magmator, which takes lava as a fluid, would generate 10,000 FE per tick. But the nitro furnator, which takes lava buckets, will generate 20,000 FE per tick. Unfortunately though, it looks like our previous setup with lava buckets won't work as nicely with the furnator. So instead we'd have to set the bottom of the fluid tank to push, and have something pipe the buckets back to our fluid tank with the filter set to buckets only. Or use something like Super Factory Manager. A nitro solar panel will actually make 50,000 FE per tick. Obviously, the limitation for these is the sun, but if you really wanted to, you could automate an Ars ritual to make it permanently daytime. Iron furnaces also has the rainbow furnace. If you have one of each kind of furnace, not including allthemodium, vibranium, and unobtainium, if all of these are working as generators and their buffers aren't full, the rainbow furnace would generate an extra 50,000 FE per tick, meaning it'll generate 52,000 FE per tick on its own, or 54,000 FE per tick with a speed upgrade. Just an FYI, a lot of people seem to have trouble getting this to work. So just remember, you can only have one rainbow furnace, and all of your other furnaces need to have generator upgrades and they need to be constantly producing energy. That means their buffers can't be full. So if you have to, you can guarantee this by using energy trash cans to void the power from all the other furnaces. Rainbow furnace is also a good option because you have to craft one at some point anyway, as it's a component of the ATM star. A full-size basic reactor from Extreme Reactors will produce a similar amount at about 53,000 FE per tick. The reactor itself is not that expensive to make. I'd only put it as a mid-game power source because it requires a constant supply of uranium. This is another good one to do because you will need to progress through Extreme Reactors to get Insanite for the ATM star. Now this is one of those methods that I don't expect to remain this way forever. Gas burning generators from Mekanism. To craft these, you'll need to have started Mekanism, as they do require refined obsidian. But honestly, that's really not a big ask, especially for what we're getting. These run on ethene, and so to produce ethene, here's what our starter setup would look like. So we have our source of water, an electrolytic separator to make hydrogen. We're also using SNAD on a redstone clock to grow cactus. I have this clock on its default at 10 ticks. The cactus we grow is going to be crushed into biofuel. A pressurized reaction chamber will turn hydrogen, water, and biofuel into ethene for our gas burning generator. So here, none of our machines are upgraded. Off the bat, we're making over 500 FE per tick. But how the gas burning generator works is the more this internal buffer fills, the more FE per tick it will generate. And with this setup alone, it's slowly getting better over time. So our setup here will top out at 11,000 FE per tick. When the gas burning generator is filled, it will produce 72,000 FE per tick. So what happens if we upgrade our setup? So now I have everything fitted with speed upgrades and energy upgrades. And the crusher I've upgraded to an ultimate crushing factory. 3 cacti on SNAD with a 10 tick redstone clock can support 2 pressurized reaction chambers. And our 2 pressurized reaction chambers can support 5 gas burning generators. And do note that 5 gas burning generators is optimal. This setup won't be able to keep our generators filled if we add a 6th generator. And so adding a 6th generator will only give us about a 15,000 FE per tick increase. And so with 5 gas burning generators, we're making about 361,000 FE per tick. And to top that all off, this setup is fully self-sustaining. We will have to give these machines some power to get them started, but other than that, it completely fuels itself. Now we're starting to approach the late game, the big power generators. The best of generator galore is the nether star generator. By itself, it only produces 4,000 FE per tick. But generator galore allows you to craft multiple generators together as a compressed variant. And so the maximum is going to be a 64x nether star generator, which will produce about 262,000 FE per tick. This will consume a nether star every 2 minutes to stay running. On top of that, the 64x nether star generator is also an ATM star component, which means regardless, you will have to craft one anyway. Powah also has reactors. In allthemods 10, although thermal generators were nerfed, Powah reactors were actually buffed. The highest tier, the nitro reactor, would generate 500,000 FE per tick. To build it, you're going to need 36 nitro reactor blocks. When you place a block, the reactor will literally build itself. For this to run, you'll need to fuel it with uraninite. But to be able to maximize energy production, you'll need to provide it with coal, redstone, and some kind of coolant. You can hover over the reactor and press U to find out all the different solid coolants, dry ice being the best one. You'll also need to provide it with water. However, you don't actually have to provide a constant supply. For whatever reason, all you need to do is add 1 bucket of water. The mycelial generator from Industrial Foregoing functions kind of like the rainbow furnace from earlier. It'll only work when all of the required generators are working around it. That being said, there are 16 other generators, and they all take very different things to fuel them. These generators don't generate too much power on their own. Combined, they'll generate about 6,000 FE per tick. However, once this setup is up and running, the mycelial generator will generate 25 million FE per tick. Now we're very much at the point of what is the best power generator in allthemods 10. It's going to be between Extreme Reactors and Mekanism. In allthemods 10, Extreme Reactors was buffed to generate more energy, and Mekanism was actually nerfed as a power generator. But the process was rebalanced so that you won't need a crazy amount of machines to reach the end game. The first Mekanism reactor is the fission reactor. This doesn't actually generate power on its own. Instead, it's used to generate steam for a turbine. A max-sized turbine would generate 60 million FE per tick. However, a max-sized fission reactor can only produce enough steam for a turbine to generate just under 40 million FE per tick. The fission reactor also produces nuclear waste, which is used to produce polonium. And this is what's needed to craft a fusion reactor. The fusion reactor, when fueled with DT fuel, will produce 80 million FE per tick. With extreme reactors, upgrading to reinforced reactors requires a good amount of steel. Now, extreme reactors can get big, and I mean big. A max-sized reinforced reactor does produce a lot of power. This one is running off plutonium as fuel and produces almost 58 million FE per tick. Progressing through extreme reactors will grant you access to better fuels for your reactor. Running on Viderium, our reactor now produces 215 million FE per tick. Although you could use your reactor for power, there are still easier ways to produce massive amounts of power with extreme reactors. Just like with Mekanism, the reinforced reactors can produce steam to power a turbine. The biggest thing in regards to power output for our turbine is what we use to make the coil. With Insanite coils, this turbine turbine can produce 63 million FE per tick. And to do this, it will only consume 2 buckets of steam per tick, which can be sustained with a reactor of this size. Comparing that to a Mekanism turbine, which would instead take 15,000 buckets per tick to produce that 60 million FE per tick. One of the largest benefits behind these turbines is it's quite easy just to build more turbines, and just as easy to supply more steam. You can actually skip the reactor entirely and use steam from other mods like liquid steam from Mekanism or steam from modern industrialization. If you have progressed through modern industrialization, this can be one of the easiest ways to make steam. With a heat exchanger, you only need lava and water. What if I haven't started modern industrialization? Can I still get it? I mean, this doesn't look too bad, right? Yeah, even though it doesn't technically cost that much, it's quite a process to set up if you haven't already done so. And with producing power, you're going to need a way to store it. Here's mainly what you need to know. In the early game, you can honestly use whatever's easiest to get your hands on. An energy battery from Integrated Dynamics holds 1 million FE on its own, but it can also be crafted with other energy batteries to form a bigger battery. Powah energy cells similarly can be combined by putting them all into an ender cell. Mekanism cubes are a little more expensive and hold less, but tend to have better transfer speeds. One of the cheapest options early game is actually the accumulator from Create Crafts and Additions. A single block will hold 2 million FE, but this can also form a multi-block structure up to 3x3x5 in size, and this will hold 90 million FE. Mekanism also has a multi-block structure for power, the induction matrix. The induction matrix has 2 main components: the induction cell, which stores power, and the induction provider, which increases transfer rates. You'll need a minimum of 1 of each in the induction matrix for it to function. A maximum size induction matrix will be 18x18x18. For this one, I have the bottom layer as induction providers and the rest as induction cells. With this, it's able to hold just over 6 PFE and has a transfer rate of about 13.5 GFE per tick. Okay, we're going to be getting into bigger numbers now, and I'm sure these prefixes are getting confusing. So here's the table I grabbed from Wikipedia. So with PFE, we're looking at 10 to the power of 15. Extreme reactors also have their own multi-block power storage called the Energizer. The Energizer is really just energy cells surrounded by Energizer casings. Once you build these, you do actually have to remember to turn them on for them to start working. The smallest Energizer you can build holds about 683 TFE. That's 683 10 to the power of 12. So how big can you build these? The maximum size Energizer you can build will be 32x32x32. Just to compare, here's what it looks like next to the induction matrix. This thing holds 18.45 EFE. EFE being 10 to the power of 18. That's about 3,000 times more than the induction matrix. Applied Flux allows you to store FE and FE storage cells within your applied energistics system. You can access them using a flux accessor, but you'll need something to insert or extract the power out. Otherwise, you can use interfaces and pattern providers when paired with an induction card. A 1K FE cell will hold 1 GFE. A full extended ME drive with 2256M FE cells altogether will hold 5.6 PFE. This tends to be the preferred method of storage for a lot of people as it's both compact and convenient, but it also transfers power very quickly. So here I have another 2256M FE cells. We're going to see how long it takes to fill these up when I put a flux point on the flux accessor. There's even more options when it comes to transferring power. Now to ask which is better, well, really it just comes down to the scenario. There will be some methods of transferring power that will be better for certain scenarios. Just know that if you need power somewhere, there's probably something that can help you with that. Some of the cheapest options for transferring power will be Integrated Dynamics, Superfactory Manager, and Pipes. The ones most capable of transferring power the fastest will be Superfactory Manager and Flux Networks, as they can both transfer at the maximum transfer speed. Superfactory Manager has the added benefit of making it easier to transfer to multiple machines at the same time, and also having the option of being able to transfer anything from items, fluids, and chemicals. Flux Networks is also one of 2 wireless cable options, the other one being ender gates from Powah. Flux plugs will pull FE, and flux points will push FE. Do note that a flux plug will only pull if there's somewhere for the power to go. Most of the time, that means something on the other end of a flux point that can accept power. Now, it is quite popular to use Flux Networks alongside Applied Flux. So let's say we want to store power from our reactor in our FE cells. We're going to put a flux plug on our reactor, which is going to pull the FE that's being generated. We'll need to create a network for this. We'll call this reactor. Then we can put a flux point onto a flux accessor that's connected to our FE storage cells. Then put the flux point on the same network as our flux plug, and we should have power coming from our reactor going into our FE storage cells. The options you have here: power surge will prioritize this over any priorities you might have set. Bypass limit will disable any transfer rate limitations, meaning it'll transfer at the fastest rate possible. Special mention also goes to applied flux for transferring power, as more often than not, you'll have pattern providers on your machines. Putting an induction card in your pattern provider will then send power to your machines from your FE storage cells. This will mean that you won't have to add additional cables to provide power to your machines. Aside from wireless cables, there are 2 truly wireless methods of transferring power that don't need to make contact with the blocks they're providing power to: modular routers and the energy transmitter from Just Dire Things. A modular router can transfer power to 8 different blocks for each energy distribution module that it has, and it has 9 slots for modules, meaning that it can transfer to a maximum of 72 different blocks. The energy transmitter doesn't transfer energy as fast, but targets blocks in the configured area, making it much easier to set up. There's also a lot of items and tools that will need something that can charge them. There are some blocks that purely exist to charge items, for example, like the charging station. But there are also some blocks that you might already be using that can also charge items as well. Mekanism energy cubes also have a slot to charge items, and so do generators from generators galore. Extreme reactors can also be fitted with a charging port which can charge items. There are also batteries. These are items that you can charge that you can then use to charge items in your inventory. And for that, I'm talking about batteries from Powah as well as energy batteries from integrated dynamics. Shift right clicking with these will switch them on and allow them to charge your items. The energy battery, however, will only charge the item that you're holding. The pocket generator from Just Die Things is also quite similar. By default, you can press V to toggle it on and off. As the name suggests, it's a generator in your pocket. Not only can it provide power to your inventory, but it can also generate power if you give it fuel. And there's also some options to charge your inventory remotely. The player transmitter will first need power supplied to it. Then you'll need to craft a player card and bind it to you. Putting this into the player transmitter will allow it to charge your inventory remotely. Using the card on an Enderman will instead turn it into a dimensional binding card. And this will instead allow the player transmitter to charge your inventory even if you're in another dimension. The flux controller needs to be on a network that has access to power. Then within the flux controller, you'll need to enable all the charging options and turn on wireless charging. And just like that, it'll charge your inventory wirelessly from any dimension. Arguably one of the most powerful things that you could have is a subscription to the BucketSt YouTube channel for the most informative and up-to-date content on all the mods 10. You should have liked the video as well if you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if there's anything in particular you want me to cover, and I'll try adding it to my very long video to-do list. But other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.